Hi, I'm Safi Thomas. I am the Artistic Director of the Hip Hop Dance Conservatory.
My name is Yvonne Chow, and I'm the Education Director of the Hip Hop Dance Conservatory.
Well, I think the first important thing is to know that I never intended to do this. This wasn't what I wanted to do. This isn't what I was going for. I was moving towards medicine. I was already in a pre-med program. I had already decided that I was going to be a doctor. I was going to work in trauma, and that was going to be my life. Life took me in a very odd direction. I think I got exposed to dance from the professional end in high school. I was at a party, and some guy walked up to me and said, "Hey, you want to dance on this program?" And it was for MTV The Grind. And from there, everything just went in a totally odd direction for me. For my experience in dance before hip hop was all actually, funny enough, more in like modern and more classical dance. I was trained under the Graham technique, and before doing Graham, I did balancing. So my mom, she was a ballet dancer. She was with New York City Ballet. So my thoughts on dance were always a little bit different from everyone else around me. And so as hip hop began to become what it was, the thoughts, I think, I always joke about it, but I think what I'm doing right now was always in my head, even when I was like maybe a teenager. It was always in my head. I just never had any intentions on bringing it to fruition. But as my dance career started to take off and I started to do more work, then all of a sudden I stopped. I was like, you know what, this is not for me anymore. And I was like 5 years into it. I was like, this isn't for me anymore, and I started just teaching. I was teaching high school, became a high school teacher, and from there, I was working in Harlem, and I was looking around and I saw that the kids did not have any type of activities, especially there were no dance programs or anything like that. And so I was like, I created this program that was a community-based program, all out of pocket. At the time I had money, so I was like, yeah, let me spend it. So we put together a group of, I walked around to all the neighboring projects and walked door to door and say, hey, would your kid want to dance? And surprisingly enough, I got very negative responses when, because, I was walking around, I'm in my like suit and tie, and I'm like, they must have thought I was, a Jehovah's Witness or something. I'm like, hey, your kid want to do, some dance? And they're looking at me like, who is this guy? But sure enough, we started off with 2 dancers, 2 kids that came down, and then from 2 it spread to about 50, and then from 50 we became 150, and that was somewhere around like 94, 95, somewhere around there, and then from there the program itself started to morph. From being just a community, organization, and then we started an entertainment company, and that just happened again off of a fluke. It was not intentional. Somebody came and said, I need 2 dancers for a music video, and from that request, we started an entertainment company, and from there, that's when I started to see that nothing had really changed since I had been in the industry before. And actually it had gotten worse in that there is a level of misogyny and ignorance that exists within the industry. And there's a high level of exploitation, especially when it comes to women in dance. My organization has pretty much always been like 90% female. And at the time that angered me that this is the way dancers were being treated. And so from there, I the mission of the entertainment company was to confute the stigma that was being created for women within the industry. From there, we saw the need for education, because looking at how dancers didn't really have an understanding of things like line, level, shape, breath. These are concepts that just were not inclusive of hip hop, because hip hop is just about being free, and it's about what you were exposed to. So if you're a b-boy, or if you're from the Bronx, well, this is what you were exposed to. Or if especially New York, between the 80s and 90s, we were starting to be exposed to a lot of different elements. We were exposed to popping, we were exposed to locking, which is all from the West Coast. We got exposed to boogaloo through the electric boogaloos. And then, in the 80s, you had party dances, and those party dances were introduced into the mainstream, through people like Elite Force and Stretch and people like that, who they started to put that into music videos. And then that's how that dance actually started to become popularized, as opposed to it just being a small little social dance. These social dances combined to actually become some type of cohesive dance art form. And so now you have these elements, all these elements that are under this umbrella of hip hop. And a lot of the dancers that were coming, they didn't have this education. They didn't even know, like, well, what am I doing? Why do you do this? Where does this come from? Who started that? They didn't have any history, and they had no idea of the lineage that they have in relation to their art.
So there has to be a weight shift that happens, right? We're doing the knee snap. You have to first lean on one leg. Right after you snap, you have to bring the weight down on the next leg in order to knee snap. A lot of you are just wanting to knee snap before your entire weight is on the ground, and if you do that, it won't actually happen and the knee snap will not occur. So everybody just do the weight shift. So we're doing right, left, right, left, right. Sorry, right, left, right, left, right. Good. Now what's happening with the upper body? So expansion, contract, expansion, contract. So this is different than if you're just doing this, right? We're not just going from side to side. There's this movement happening right here that we can't let go, okay?
Hip hop has a 40-year-old lineage, a little bit older than that, and no one knows about it, except for the originators and the pioneers who started it. And so that's where, I just wanted to make sure that they at least had that education, because in having that education, that gives you a purpose now. Now that you have lineage, and you know that you're a part of that lineage, now you have purpose, and you know what you can do with that, and you know that you can actually have a future in this. So that's where we went from, the entertainment company to the academy, and then, 15 years later, actually 10 years later, we started the conservatory to have a center of higher education, because you can't go to college and get a BFA and study hip hop. You would have to study ballet, or you have to study modern. The reason why is because, well, that's classical training, and you need classical training. But the idea or the concept of classical training does not have to be centered around one art. There are several different arts that require classical training. To be a painter, you have to be classically trained. To be to be a photographer, you have to be classically trained. To be a videographer, you have to be classically trained. It's about the level of training and the way that you approach your training that makes you classically trained. And that's what was missing in hip hop. There's no focus on the structure and training for the dancers. And so that's why we started the conservatory, in order to bring that level of structure and focus to the art, and make sure that people understand and know the history, and know that there are people before them that have done this, and maybe having that level of understanding of their history, they may also understand that they have a future.
Yes.
Give yourselves a hand. That comes from two things. Like what we now see in like the dance studios is part interpretation, and then there's also that lack of standard that's out there. You don't have to have any type of, like right now, the standard to be a teacher of hip hop in a dance studio is, well, what music videos have you done? What artist, what was the last artist that you worked with? You know, if I was on So You Think You Can Dance, then I can teach class tomorrow. I can roll out of bed and, you know, happen to get on America's Best Dance Crew, and now I'm teaching master classes. And you know, not that there's anything wrong with gaining popularity for what you do and recognition for what you do. However, that creates this lack of standard in the art, and people aren't thinking about the art in general. They're just thinking about egocentrically about themselves. And then they make this approach, and their approach is, let's have no approach at all. And then you've got people who have ignored everything that happened before them. They're, you know, they don't understand that there are elements to hip hop. There is a standard. There is a vocabulary. There's movement vocabulary. There is a codification within each element within hip hop, and ignoring that creates this disparity, or actually creates a dichotomy where you've got, you know, real hip hop on one side, and then you have this jazzy funk type of, you know, amalgamation on the other. And slowly but surely you're stepping away from the roots of what the art is. And I mean, I say it all the time, the reason why ballet has lasted over 400 years is because there's always been a sense of structure and codification and holding on to that history and making sure that everyone understands what they are doing. And so you know what the movement is, and you know why the movement is there, and you also understand, you know, the codification of the art. And through that codification, once you've got that basic structure, then your creativity is not in ignoring the structure, but in creating something new from the structure. And that's what makes the art evolve. Ballet 300 years ago is not ballet today, and ballet 100 years from now, or 50 years from now, or even a decade from now, is not going to be the ballet it is today. And it's the same thing with hip hop. But before hip hop can do that, it has to be taught from its foundations. You know, popping, locking, party dance, boogaloo, breaking, which is, you know, the culmination of what hip hop started with. Hip hop started with breaking, or what people call break dance. Well, it's either you got b-boys, you have b-girls, and the style itself would be breaking. And break dance was just, that's like the way the media termed it, but that's not what it is. It's you're either a b-boy or you're a b-girl, and you know, we call ourselves breakers. We're not saying, you know, we don't call ourselves break dancers. We just call ourselves breakers. Breaking has a lot of, you know, it's highly codified, highly codified. Every movement has a name. Every movement has a lineage. Every movement has its specialization as well, and, you know, different ways that different people from different parts of New York did it. Or even people from different sides of the Bronx. You have, you know, styles that came out of the South Bronx. You have styles that came out of the West Bronx. You've got, you know, styles that came from, you know, all over the place. So you have this whole diaspora that's centered around hip hop.